Christ. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined once again by my friends Lou and Thomas. We've done several videos together now in the past, including one on Jordan Peterson and the resurrection, which really brought a lot of attention to this channel, thank God, especially because Jordan shared it with his followers and so on. And it was great to be able to share the work that these gents are doing with a great number of people. And together today we'll discuss in a kind of bittersweet mood the YouTube channel Logos Made Flesh, remembering the life and work of our friend Matt Miller, who was actually one of the members of the roundtable discussion we had on the resurrection. Sadly, Matt passed away a few months ago, and he lays in wait for that great day. Whilst I'm confident he's now with us in spirit, he's also left this indelible impression on each of us. Is over 100,000 YouTube subscribers, and it seems a great many people who are fortunate to know him. So first of all, I suppose, do you guys want to introduce yourselves again and share a little bit of what Matt and his channel meant to each of you? If I can start with yourself, Lou, and then we can ask you, Thomas.
Great. My name's Louis Markos, and I'm an English professor, scholar in residence in Houston. We used to be called Houston Baptist University. We just changed to Houston Christian University. I teach the Romantics and the Victorians. I teach anything having to do with ancient Greece and Rome. I teach Lewis and Tolkien, and I also do teach film and art sometimes. And Matt reached out to me. He was just great at building community, and we had, long dialogues on Facebook Messenger, and we also spoke on I never met him in person, but we spoke on the phone a number of times. I remember a long conversation with him as I was walking, and I suddenly got caught in a rainstorm and stuff like that. But we used to talk a lot because one of the things I write about a lot is bringing Athens and Jerusalem together, bringing reason, imagination together, learning from all different mediums. And a lot of times, more conservative Christians are a little bit, a little bit suspicious of images, especially if you think of Baptists. I'm at a Baptist church these days, and, Baptists are really people of the book. We like words. And sometimes there's even a little bit of iconoclasm often amongst Baptists and other evangelicals. And Matt was doing a great job at getting us to appreciate the image as much as the word, and getting us to really look closely at movies, look for the code, look for not just the rational message, but the sort of intuitive message of what's going on a deeper level. And I always gave him a lot of patience. Remember, I'm an English professor, and people are always accusing us of reading into things, right? So that gave me a lot of patience, because especially his what's that crazy movie, Mad Max? He's got the most amazingly complicated reading of that, and it's like, but hey, give him some time. He's trying to put together bits and pieces, one thing that really linked me with Matt, and also links us all with Jordan Peterson, is that focus on archetypes, right? That there are these repeated types or images that come up again and again in high culture, in pop culture, in film. It's there again and again and again. And, Jesus himself is the ultimate archetype, right? He fits so many, the foundling and all that sort of stuff. And so one of the things I liked about Matt was bringing that understanding that you see in Jordan Peterson or Joseph Campbell, or which of course influenced George Lucas. He would bring that kind of thinking into film to get us to look at it deeper. So, in that sense, every Christian should give us eyes to see and ears to hear. And he did a very good job with that, I thought.
Oh man, thanks, Lou. How about yourself, Thomas?
My name is Thomas Wijnaendts. I'm a social studies teacher in training. I'm also a historian, and I work for the Armchair Historian YouTube channel. I used to be part of the Storytellers YouTube channel for about 5 years, and that's how I met Matt. And I think I actually met him through you, Mark. I think you formally introduced him to me. When I met Matt first, I knew his channel, I'd watched some of his videos, and it was his channel as well as Jordan Peterson's, and then Jonathan Pajot's channel, and their interpretation of movies, which all seemed uniquely astute to me, and I especially like the sort of quasi-Jungian in terms of in regards to Jordan Peterson, and the more Christian symbolical takes of Jonathan. And then Matt just had a knack for really getting these puzzles or solving these puzzles in these movies in a very unique way, and using a little bit of the archetypes. But like you said, like Lou said as well, with Mad Max, he just kind of found something there. And I just rewatched the video. I'm like, I would have never, in my 5 years doing it, I would have never gotten to that point where I got that. But I think, his notes are very on point, and just make me see these movies in very different ways. And especially his Christian emphasis in all of these films, have helped me kind of see movies in a different light, and kind of, how all these stories that he sees are always kind of part of the one story, and he's always like, there's always these elements in there, and that's why they resonate. And I fully agree with that. I think that's the best stories, and the best movies always have some part of the pattern there. Matt and I did a video together on Christopher Nolan's latest movie, and now the name eludes me for a second. Tenet. And Matt, and this was a couple, maybe a year or something before Matt got sick, and this was the height of COVID, and so I think all the theaters were all closed or whatever near him, and there was one theater was open, and he drove for like 2.5 hours or 3 hours to go see that movie, so we could do that video together, because I'd seen it. I told him, it's good, you need to see it. And so he went there, and then not only did he go there, and then like 2 days or 3 days later, he went again because he needed more stuff for the video. And so that was just like, Matt was just so, he was so inspired, and he loved movies and like good films so much that, and I shared that with him, and just that kind of made me really excited about it as well. We did a great video together, I think, about Tenet, and he had some really, as usual, really great and unique thoughts that are very out of the box. And I miss him dearly, and it's sad that he can't be here today for the 100th video, but I hope we can do his work some justice by talking about it and talking a little bit about his life.
That's lovely. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Wijnaendts. I'd love to look at some specific themes in those videos that we mentioned, if we may. I think, in part for me, they're such a great help in exploring life's big questions in this very kind of existential way. To Lou's point, it's engaging your imagination, your reason, and so on and so forth. And one of those is the God Who Isn't There, which was the one about Castaway. It saw different iterations over the years. It seems to be largely about trusting God. Well, this is my interpretation alongside others, I'm sure you can bring to the fore, about trusting God amidst the hardships of life, and how he speaks to us, or even when he doesn't, how we might wrestle with that. I wonder what you each think about that, and maybe even other elements of the video. For example, this importance of finding the rhythms of creation in the internet age and things like that, which is another kind of thread that I discerned in that video that he was offering us. Can I start with
I just remember how he just begins by saying, why does that movie have such an elongated ending? It should end when he gets off the island. But what is he working his way through? And I just think about the journey of how sort of God has to take us to the lowest point and then sort of build us back up again. All the things, just about blood and about pain and even finding what is it, the sort of center point of the moment when he throws the thing and he's like, that's it, I'm all done. And then he's going to build him back up again. It was just, yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of people do detailed interpretations of things like films, but he just went the next step higher. I mean, he tried to get into because it all started because I asked him. I said, the thing I don't understand about Castaway that to me made it seem unbelievable is that never on all the time he's on the island does he ever pray or talk to God. And I'm like, even an atheist would talk to God, and that's what it was kind of interesting, that the silence, the what is not said, that it actually is a wrestling match with God, but in a way that's deeper than like a prayer. And so I came back and I watched over the years. I watched all the iterations of it, and still trying to get at, it's sort of like Beowulf, where the author, the anonymous author of Beowulf, was almost surely a Christian monk. But he wrote Beowulf in a pre-Christian mode. He doesn't give Beowulf the Christian consolation because he's a pagan hero. And of course, Tolkien does that as well. Tolkien is a Christian Catholic writer, but he is writing Middle Earth in a pre-Christian and even pre-Jewish mode. So that's one of the ways I sort of approach this odd way of getting it. I don't know. What did you make of it, Tom? It is, again, it's a very complex reading.
It's I actually have not watched that movie yet. I know Matt was actually very mad when I told him I hadn't, and so now I feel bad. I still haven't watched the movie. I've watched parts of it. I've watched his videos because he asked me to help kind of figure some things out about it. I told him that like I haven't watched the movie, so I don't know how much I can help you with it. What struck me most about it, which is going to be something different, just because I can't really speak to the movie itself, is that this is his last video that he made, and it's also very much. It's sort of like weirdly in line with like what he himself was kind of going through and you know, in his own hardships in life. And I know that this particular video, and he made it in a 2-part video, right? Was that important to him that and this was something that I would like to get back into a little bit later down towards the end of the video, is that when Matt was sick, he posted on social media kind of looking back on his own work, and especially the videos that he made, and where he talked about that his interpretations and his like struggles with story and trying to kind of get the key of certain stories and the essence of certain stories was really preparing him for what he was going to go through with his disease. And so, you know, today I looked at some of the videos that he did, and even going back to the ones in 2016, and a lot, you know, I think he was really right, and I can completely see how he thought that this was kind of like preparing the way for him. So like the videos were not necessarily as much, they were for us and because he loved movies, of course, but are just as much for himself. You're talking about movies like No Country for Old Men, The Sixth Sense, Groundhog Day, and Castaway, all movies that really, and Memento, have characters in them that really go down to like the lowest point, and in many of these movies also kind of know their future, or think that they know what their ultimate fate will be, and usually not a very good one, and then still, you know, have to struggle with God, and then kind of come out on the other side and kind of and grow from that, or have some sort of a resurrection moment, and embrace life despite the struggles that they face, or that they continue to face. And that especially, I think, was really what really struck me, even, you know, looking at that watching that Castaway video, and then looking at the other videos that he did before. But we could talk a little bit more about it, I guess, when we go through his individual videos.
Beautiful, thanks, Thomas. And in one of those movies you mentioned there, Thomas, this commentary that he did on No Country for Old Men, he offered, I think, a more nuanced reading of things like Pascal's wager and the importance of really taking a risk given the inevitability of death. I wonder if you might take this one now. How does placing a bet on God make sense in this context then, as opposed to this cruder notion of just betting on God so you get this golden ticket to heaven, so to speak, when you die? And maybe how does that fit with the pattern on Matt's channel, as Thomas alluded to, how it prepared him for his illness and so on? Does that make sense?
He does too, and I remember also a very good one he did on Ex Machina. You know, what does it mean to be human? It's like this robot that's sort of, you know, becoming more and more human. So he often was discussing, you know, that. I mean, he's accepting the fact that we're in a world of sort of existential despair, you know, as we are in No Country. And of course, the author of No Country for Old Men is a Christian. He's kind of a dark one, but I mean, you know, Cormac McCarthy. He also did. I don't think he did a thing on this. He also did The Road, which ended up starring Viggo Mortensen.
Oh, yeah.
Apocalyptic. I don't think he did a video of that, did he?
No,
I didn't
no.
see it. If he did, I didn't think so. But that was a very dark one as well. But again, that the, you know, again, we simplify it. You know, it's not just it's the villain who's flipping the coin, deciding whether or not, you know, his victim is going to live or not. But there's a deeper, I mean, and it comes out in the end, at the very end of the movie, when the sheriff, who's playing the sheriff? It's Tommy Lee Jones, isn't it? Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones. The main guy is Josh Brolin, from the Goonies, by the way. But yeah, at the end, it kind of zeroes in, and I remember Matt focusing in on that of his sense of trying to bring law and order and justice in a world of despair. You know, the villain has just Javier Bardem has just sort of given up on it, and he's entered into the meaninglessness of it. But there is an attempt at the end to bring meaning into it as well. And again, to me, you know, that's why Matt's not scared away from a movie that seems like Mad Max, that seems on the outside to be very existential and not much hope, and trying to inject the death and resurrection motif in there. And I thought he did a good job at that.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Lou. And I suppose, Thomas, does this trend and does this speak to you in your own experience of becoming a Christian, especially an Orthodox Christian, which is very liturgical and so on? Does it speak to our nature beyond this more prepositional knowledge alone that we assume in many secular contexts, and almost the inevitability of liturgy, as our friend Jonathan Pajot seems to suggest, and James K. Smith and others have described? If that makes sense, does that fit with your experiences, Thomas, or does his work help us to get back to a more integrated notion of what it means to be human, in line with what Louis is describing as this kind of existential flavor and so on? Does that make sense?
Matt's work, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I mean, I like especially what he did with Groundhog Day, and this kind of stripping away of the hubris of the character, and how he kind of becomes more involved with the people he deals with in a very selfless manner, not for this controlling manner. And he kind of starts living in that world and kind of accepts it and his position in it, and that's kind of how he gets out of his issue, right, of having to relive that same day. You know, moving here to the US is something that I really noticed about the importance of communion and sort of like the participatory aspect of life. And it's something that I think that also comes back in I guess in Matt's videos, and also in Castaway, is that, you know, you need a car everywhere here to get around, and the cities are all, you know, they usually tend to not have the center. The place where I live, I like to joke, it's called Henrietta. It's in New York, and I like to joke that the place that it's not real, because there's no town of Henrietta. It says there's no center anywhere where you can go. It's like a bunch of strip malls and there's a bunch of suburbs, but there's no like, what is Henrietta? Like, it's just like a collection of, it's just a piece of ground essentially. There's no real place for people to commune beyond like going to the arcade or something like that. And so and I sense from a lot of people here as well that they, especially the younger kids at school, that they feel this type of isolation or sort of lack of communion, because especially for them, everything is online. Their school, everything is on a computer. There's very little physicality about their lives, even though their opportunities to be in contact with each other are bigger than ever. And so I've been trying to consciously live my life more physically, and also, of course, going to church. And that's also why the Orthodox Church appeals to me so much. And I've been talking about that with people, and about, you know, the importance of having a memory as well, and traditions and things that you can participate in, like communal things like feasts and stuff like that, and having a city that actually has a center with like a church usually in the center, like the way that European cities were built. Yeah, I mean, we could talk a little bit about Memento and Arrival, I guess, and the importance of memory. I don't know. You've been asking all the questions, Mark. I'd like to hear your view on this as well.
Thanks for that, Thomas. Just
Yeah.
under the bus. No, so the next thing I was going to explore, which I think speaks to my concern quite forcefully, is again Groundhog Day that you mentioned, and how Bill Murray's character reminds me of an emphasis in Chesterton, for example, on wonder and the importance of returning to wonder. And it
Mm.
seems in that film that he finds this sense of joy and wonder in the
Yes.
simple things of life, playing the piano, sculpting. It's a wonderful, I think, a wonderful element of the film that Matt brings out again. And I'm wondering again how that just dodged from my question to you, Lou. I wonder how that fits with your work on apologetics that you've done on figures like Chesterton. You've done this wonderful series on atheism and its different iterations throughout history, from Lucretius to all these people through, and how that more integrated Christian perspective differs from that more atomist perspective that Thomas is alluding to, and how that maybe plays out at a societal level in our cities and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm seeing. While we're talking, if I look distracted, I just realized that I still have my conversation with Matthew on Facebook Messenger. So I'm scrolling through it as we're talking. And one of the things I found that makes me think of what we're talking about, this was pretty soon before he died. He said, I think the new atheists are looking at the world now and recognizing the weeds that they unleashed. And I think that interesting. I'm see if I can find other ones while we're talking. We should have done this before, but it didn't strike me till we were talking because we had a lot of ongoing debates on Facebook Messenger. And again, that this is the upshot, but sometimes you need to see the upshot of saying. It goes back to what we said before about the death and resurrection, about having to go down and understanding the implications of your worldview. And I think we see this in No Country for Old Men. Where does it lead to? Where does a kind of existential view of the world lead you to? And how does it leave you trapped in there? And how do you get out of it? I mean, that's one of the things certainly Matt was good at with the movies, is analyzing its worldview. But the good thing about what he did, I think what sets him apart is some Christian apologists look at the worldview, and then if they see it's negative or it's postmodern, it's like, all right, we'll throw out that movie. But he's like, no, there's still going to be something redemptive here,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
There's still going to be something that we go to. Yes, we recognize it as postmodern, but it's also human, and it's also showing us our own failings and the consequences of our worldview, whether we know it or not. And so a lot of times that's what a movie does. It shows us. I mean, this is just, I don't, I'm not 100% sure if Matt would agree with this, but he might agree with this, is, okay, the great novel, Lord of the Flies, right? The funny thing about Lord of the Flies is the author, William Golden, was basically an atheist. But the funny thing is that book, almost better than any book written by a Christian, almost proves original sin. I mean, what happens to us on the island, and an atheist doesn't believe in original sin. Everything is just whatever it is. So whatever William Golden thinks he was doing, a lot of atheists think that their pessimism is helping them. But like, no, the view that is pessimistic is original sin, but it's also optimistic because there's also hope as well. And I think those are the kind of subtle things that are setting Matt's film analysis off from others. He's able to go through the postmodern nihilism to maybe come out on the other side. I know you feel that way, either of you? I'm going to keep looking for stuff he said here, little bits of wisdom.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lou. And another important facet of his work and his life, from what I knew of him, was his role as a teacher, which I think comes across in these videos. He sort of emphasized to me the importance of properly communicating with your audience, which I should know as a teacher anyway, but it really stuck with me the way he sort of put it to me, that you can have this highbrow notion, and you can go down these little rabbit holes and try to unlock all these mysteries, but it's going to have to meet people where they are in many ways. And I think that his work is great in part for that reason. And I suppose building upon what you're talking about, Louis, this darkness and light, there is the hope of resurrection in our lives, and in some of these movies that he dealt with, like The Shawshank Redemption, for example.
Oh yeah.
And I was wondering, tying those 2 points together, why a movie like that resonates with all kinds of folks. high art. It's also popular culture, and then I think Matt shows in his video that it's incredibly popular on IMDb and things like that. And even in a secularist culture, with Andy as the Christ figure and so on, and including emphasis of how Red must be redeemed, and it hits those different notes of the mind, the heart, and the spirit, I think. And I wonder how you found his commentaries. He did a few commentaries on that film, and how does it elucidate some of these themes that have concerned you in your lives and works, I suppose, respectively then?
I mean, you see how, early on, some of the prisoners that get out can't survive in the open world, and then they hang themselves. And I mean, literally, when the hero leaves, he literally goes to the sewers. I mean, he literally has a death and resurrection experience as he's crawling underneath there. And again, you can't go out into the world unless you've actually experienced it. They go out and they're not ready for it. And I remember him talking about the impact of especially the one that hangs himself, right? One of the ones that gets out, because he can't survive there. And why is it that our hero can survive and thrive out there?
Thanks, Lou. Would you like to add anything to that there, Thomas?
Well, I think as to why it's such a popular film, I remember I've heard friends and like we've talked about this and discussed why, and I think it's many say like it's because it's such a complete story, and it has all these elements, even in terms of just storytelling. It's a drama first and foremost, but it has its horror elements, but it has its well, I wouldn't say comedic, but like its moments of levity, and so it kind of touches, it goes through to all of these aspects of story and of life, really. And I think because it's such a complete work, and I think sort of in a way, Lord of the Rings or something is similar, or even like a Harry Potter. And I think for the same reason, those are the stories that stick, and that hit a note that anyone can really get something out of, or it can resonate with anyone.
No, excellent. Thanks, Thomas. And
one of the things I remember Matt saying often was that he was not against pathos, but it has to not overwhelm logos. Like it's best to have both.
Yeah.
But we still need to come back to logos and to reason. But then the pathos can serve the logos in a good film like that. That was something I'm remembering he talked about a lot. And he was saying that, so often, like I remember him talking about, pro-choice folks who, instead of using logos, they only use pathos to demonize their enemies, as against choice or whatever. And he said, you need the pathos, but you can't give up on the logos, right? It's still a child, that sort of stuff. And again, it's important to bring those two together, because a lot of the fights, at least over here in America, is over just pure pathos. There is no standard of reason or logos that we're measuring it against. It's just, how do you feel?
No, absolutely. Thanks for that. And I wonder what your thoughts are, Lou, on, have you watched A Quiet Place and Matt's commentary on
Oh
that?
yeah, I really like that. I just introduced my kids to part 1 and part 2. Yeah, and I think he points out too that the family does say a prayer at one point, don't they? A silent prayer around the table. Yeah, I remember he focuses on that. And there is that need. I'm trying to remember all the details of that. But it was. I don't know if he got to see A Quiet Place part 2 or not. I can't remember. Did he do one on part 2?
No, I don't think he did. Did he?
No, I don't think he did a video on part 2.
Yeah,
but I think he did see it.
You think he saw it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on that movie then, as it pertains to things like fatherhood and the importance of self-sacrificial love, which it comes across very strongly, especially maybe considering the recent phenomenon described by your colleague Lou and Nancy Piercy in the toxic war on masculinity that's so common today. If that makes
sense. That it is true, and she does bring such a good point. I've heard her speak about it many times. Is that in the earlier 19th century, the father in the Christian world, the father was considered the main child rearer, in the sense that the father needs to bring a sense of order and respect and reverence and logic and all of that sort of stuff. And you can really see it in the change in the concept of virtue. All right. for the ancient Romans, the word virtue comes from the word vir, which means man. It almost means manliness. But that's because before the Romantic period, particularly, virtue is linked to reason and to order. To be virtuous means to be in the proper, the idea of properly ordered desires, properly directed desires. And virtue means being in the proper balance with God, with the cosmos, with yourself. But ever since the Romantic age, virtue has become emotionalized, has also become more feminized. So it's more about feeling. And she shows that in the earlier 19th century, most of the child rearing books about raising the kids were actually directed to the father, not to the mother. But more and more we split it. And now we make virtue more about a kind of sentimentality. And it is so powerful to see the strong father in A Quiet Place. So he not only sacrifices himself, he's the one that is trying to bring order and explain to his children the need for a sort of safety and a reverence. And this is why, of course, Matt did not see this, but I think he would have been very excited by the sequel to Avatar, because on one sense, the second Avatar is a woke thing in the sense it's fully about worshiping nature. But I would argue, and I think Matt would agree, that Way of Water, whatever, the Avatar 2 is one of the most conservative movies I've seen in a long time, because it is about a father whose job is to guard, okay? And both the water natives and the land natives, it's the same thing. And the woman, the wives of the two male leaders are strong, but they're more like wise women who are in touch with nature. I mean, it is unbelievably a sort of traditional family here, where father and mother are both doing something very important, but the father's main job is to guard and protect, like the father in The Quiet Place, leading up even to sacrificing himself. It's an amazing scene.
What do you
What do
want
you
to
think?
add to that,
Have you seen the new Waterworld?
I'm
saying
I
Waterworld.
haven't
I'm sorry, I mean
watched.
Avatar.
No, I haven't. Like, everyone has been telling me to watch it, but I didn't care that much for the first one. I didn't like all the CGI and the blue
Oh,
aliens
yeah.
and all that. So, and it's like 3 hours long. So
It is long.
I was gonna go to it with my wife, and then I think we ended up going to The Whale because that's what she wanted to watch.
Was
So,
it as horrible as they say? I haven't seen it yet.
it was out. It was well, I'll say it's terrifically acted. I think the Oscar was well deserved there, but it was
Brendan Fraser, yeah.
it was a lot. I was very depleted by the end of that movie. It was because all the characters in it are like have their own all of trauma and all of their own sort of selfish desires, and I think the main character is very flawed. But I mean, in terms of the movie, that was very well made. But it's definitely not one to watch on a Friday night, whatever. Like it was much. It was a lot of a lot of baggage.
Something that Thomas and I were talking about, Lou, before we started recording was this parallel in femininity. So Thomas, I think, has done some great work in the past for storytellers, analyzing movies like Collateral and showing what properly ordered masculinity might look like, as opposed to this kind of modern secularist notion. And I was listening to a podcast recently, with Jordan Peterson's podcast, and he had this lady, Louise Perry, on, who's not a believing Christian, but she's kind of Christian in the Tom Holland sense. That she basically believes all the Christian views of the world without consciously believing it. And she mentioned how since the 60s America and things like that, that there's only this one archetype that Marilyn Monroe sort of played to, this virginal archetype, as it were, and women aren't being encouraged to move to the next stages, so to speak, which integrate the former stages of the mother and the matriarch.
Right.
Things like that.
The mother, the maid, and the crone. Is that what you're thinking? Those three?
Yeah, probably, yeah. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that and how that coming together of properly ordered masculinity and femininity together, because whilst Nancy's doing this great work on recovering masculinity and so on, there is also that toxic femininity, like you said, you need to have reason and logos and pathos. You need to have, even within the masculine and the feminine, individually, those two things, or two things, maybe more, it seems. I just wondered, do you have any thoughts on that? Because it seems that Matt and his family, for example, seem to be integrating that pattern very well from the little that I knew of them. And they seem to have a wonderful family structure, which is beautiful to see.
Yeah. Were you asking me or Tom?
Yourself, Lou, if that makes
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure you were asking now. Okay. I mean, it is. I mean, it is true that from film we often get our understanding of masculinity and femininity. And there, oh my God, I can't remember what it was called, but in America they laid down this rule, which I think is sort of despicable. They decided that what they hate is in American movies where the woman is always defined in her relationship to a man. So they made this rule. Maybe Tom or you know what it's called. It's this rule that if you have a movie and you have female characters in it, there has to be several scenes in which the women are only with other women's and they don't say anything about men and there's nothing about their relationship to men. I can't remember the name. None of you heard of it? Anyway.
No, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's got a name.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like, this really upsets me because, I teach the Iliad and the Odyssey all the time. And I say that one of the things that American feminists, and I'm sure in Europe as well, they always complain that when we talk about men, we talk about them as separate autonomous individuals. But when we talk about women, we talk about them as somebody's mother, somebody's wife, somebody's sisters, et cetera, et cetera. And I say, when women attack that, what they are attacking is femininity. What they are attacking is one of the most important contributions that the female sex makes to it. It is the job of the woman to keep reminding the man that he's not just an autonomous individual, but he's somebody's son and somebody's father and somebody's brother, right? For instance, I like to tell my female students, I said, now you understand that the moment you get married, the first thing you have to do is memorize the birth dates and anniversary dates of all of your husband's family, because he's not going to remember. Okay. So it's in other words, this is a very important role. And most women take more joy in that, of identifying themselves in terms of relationships. And when a feminist is attacking that, they're actually attacking femininity. And in some ways, they're masculinizing themselves, which I think is a deep and terrible irony. That's not, and that's why the best movies on the sexes are the old romantic comedies, screwball comedies and stuff. Bring out that's where the women actually, in the old screwball comedies, the heroines often had more real power, because by being truly feminine and being more open with their relationships and their vulnerability, they end up having to help the men. They in the old Katharine Hepburn movies, she's the center of it because she knows how to. Whereas in modern movies, what happens is either the woman becomes some kind of a victim, or she becomes a super killing machine. In other words, she just becomes a man. So she loses any power in terms of. Have you heard a lot of people complaining about Rings of Power, the way they presented Galadriel? They call her Guy Ladriel. Have you seen that? Have you seen that? I don't know who coined that, but she's Guy Ladriel in most of the Rings of Power till maybe the end. So that was pretty funny.
Thanks for that, Lou. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Thomas? Or
yeah, I mean, I think most movies, I think the Rings of Power is also one of the reasons why I decided not to watch it. Is because when you're talking about feminine characters, there's many movies now which are very conscious of that, of course, and have female protagonists and whatnot, which in itself is not. I don't have anything against this, but I think most of the time, not always, but most of the time, it is, as you say, Lou, where the character kind of either is some type of victim, or they take on this type of masculine role, where really what we're doing is that there's just very few movies that we're making that are really about femininity, or like, let's say, empowering femininity or celebrating it. And so really it's all just about men in the end. So it is strange. There is, however, one movie that Netflix made. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a Christmas movie. It's called Klaus. It's an animated movie. I don't know if you
I have to look for it. Tell me about it.
So it's, I mean, maybe not the right time to watch the Christmas movie now, but it's it is a fantastic, and honestly, it's a fantastic, almost the perfect movie, animated movie about it's two protagonists. The guy is he's a mailman, and then he goes to like this sort of fictional Finland or something, and he's from a rich family and whatnot, and he's very selfish, and he doesn't want to do anything. He's lazy, and his dad sends him to basically disinherits him, and he sends him to become a mailman, a simple mailman in this Finnish sort of fake village. And in the village, there's these two camps, and they're at war with each other. They all hate each other, and he's kind of there as the mailman to kind of bring. His role becomes to bring peace again to the town, and he finds Santa Claus. It's just called Claus, and he makes toys, and so through giving toys and stuff to the village and kind of talking to them, and I won't spoil too much, but his mission is to bring order to that town essentially. And then there's this girl involved there who's a teacher, and she's very disgruntled with the education system there and whatever. She's kind of like very pessimistic, and so they have an interplay where I think both of the characters here, him in the more masculine role and her in the more feminine role, kind of like their interplay really, it doesn't denigrate either one of them, and it is a very wholesome movie, and I can't believe Netflix produced it, but it's a real gem. Yeah, no, you should 100% watch it. It's a really good movie, and one that is worthy of analysis. And I don't know if Matt actually saw it, but yeah. That's one you should look out for. There's still sometimes there'll be a movie they'll make, and I'm like, well, I'm very pleasantly surprised by it. But one of the reasons why I even stopped doing my channel is because there's just so many movies and TV shows that it's just like I don't want to say anything about it. It's just like it doesn't do anything for me. But every now and then you still get one.
Amazon Prime just got Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, and that's a very good female protagonist played by Leslie Manville. It's actually a remake of an old movie based on an old book. But it is very good.
Mrs.
Harris Goes to Paris.
Okay.
It just came to Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun.
And you recommended the series. Was it Miravista to me, Thomas? I thought that was excellent.
Miravista on HBO with what's her name from Titanic?
Kate Winslet.
Yeah, Kate Winslet. Yeah.
Wait, what's it called again?
Miravista.
Yes, Miravista was good. Yeah, and it. Yeah. It also, it also shows what happens to a feminine character who sort of denies her femininity. I mean, like you see a dark side to it, and that was quite powerful. That was a very good.
Right,
very good
because she really starts out because you think it's going to be another one of those.
She's not.
And then towards the end, right, there's a little bit of a twist there where she becomes
a vulnerability.
And I love that ending. I thought it was so good. One of those shows that surprised me as well.
And if you can make it to the end of the Rings of Power, Galadriel is humanized by the end because she's still doing this like for her brother. She's still doing it for her brother,
Okay.
And that's why actually one of the movies I love, one of the best, not just female hair, but female villain, a villain that is truly feminine and not just a man with breasts, like they were doing with all the Hunger Games movies and the Maze Runner and what all those movies. They were basically taking a male villain and just putting a woman in there. She's completely unbelievable. Actually, believe it or not, the best female villain is actually in the Harry Potter movies. What's her name that takes over the thing and makes everything pink? Mrs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she is a perfect example of a female villain. She thinks everything she's doing is to serve the man who's actually running the board or whatever his name is, and she's trying to bring. I mean, she's like a mother from hell. But that's what to me makes her a very, very interesting villain. One of the best villains I've seen, because she's taking something that's good and feminine and taking it to this terrible extreme. She's an amazing character. And now she's Queen Elizabeth in the last series of Netflix.
That's great, Lou. So, Thomas, I suppose it might be a good opportunity now to finish your thought about Matt and how the themes that are wonderfully elucidated in his channel marry with his personal life, and how perhaps that was God's providence in preparing him for his illness, in exploring some of these life and death themes and so on. I wonder if you want to speak to that and the importance of communion and memory and some of those things that we spoke about, how that comes across in his channel and his life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that coming back to that video on Memento and then also Arrival, I guess both of those, because they're kind of connected. where he talks about the importance of memory, of course, and how our past kind of shapes our understanding, of course, of our present and also where we're going. And Memento, of course, the issue is that he doesn't have a memory beyond like the 15 minutes that he has, right? And so how that fragments a person, and so how our memory as well is something that is kind of fluid and kind of changed over time, and how we interpret our own past, and how that brings how we understand our own life as we go through it, and how we add to that understanding. And it's something that, you know, I have tried to adopt as a historian as well, because the problem that people see in history, of course, is that, oh, this, you know, the historian that lived in the 19th century and wrote about ancient Rome had this very, of course, this view, because he was a 19th century man, and so he was constricted by his own experiences, and also the fact that he lived in the 19th century. And now the historian who lives now in the 21st century in the same way is also constricted by if he's a man or a woman, or if he's a Catholic or is an atheist, and all this sort of stuff. And so how can we get to anything that is the truth, because we're all sort of marked by our own subjectivity. And so I think the solution to that is that, far from saying that there is no meaning, or let's say a truth, let's say to your own personal life, is that we can deepen our understanding, of course, and there's different perspectives, but we can deepen our own understanding of our own life. And I think what happened with Matt is that, of course, he had his own, when he wasn't sick, he had his own view of what his work was, and I imagine it might not have been as cohesive as it was when he got sick. And he did it because he loved movies, of course, and he wanted to talk about Christianity in a way, and that is palpable for a lot of people. And he wanted to talk about how the Christian story returns, at least in some aspects, even in those stories which seem very sort of nihilistic or existentialist, right? And he wanted to always lift up or find those seeds that are there. And so I think the moment that he got sick, and what I talked about before, where he posted on social media, and I know that he went through a lot of hardship, especially when it got, you know, physically very tough for him, and he was a very active person, and now he couldn't do that anymore. And I know he was a big family man, and a presence as a father, and he couldn't, you know, take care of his family as much anymore as he did before. I know that really broke him a little bit for a while, and I think he was very open about that. So I don't think I'm being too personal in that sense. But I really vividly remember he wrote about on YouTube, he wrote about it on Facebook, that he really saw at some point, he had this revelation that his work had been building up, had been preparing the way for him, for the fact that he was going to get sick and that he was going to have to deal with this. And so his memory, of course, of his life and what he did in his work completely changed, and I think it elevated the quality of his understanding of his life. And it's just interesting to see that when you go back to those videos and what I talked about before, that many of these movies deal with these existentialist issues, with characters dealing with these almost unsurmountable odds and hardships, and how to get through that. And especially moving into those latter videos where he kind of like ups his game a little bit, and when he talks about Arrival and Memento and then finally Castaway, it's like that was sort of meant to be his last video, in a weird way. And I don't know what else to make of that, but it is, I completely understand how that might have given him a sense of how do I say it? A sense of peace, at least, or he felt that it made sense to him that was why he had his channel, and that was what he was doing, and that it had meaning not only for the people he made it for, but also a deep meaning for his own. Maybe it helped him in some way to get through what he was going through in his disease.
I think that in some ways what Matt did for film, and he might have had this in mind, is, have you ever seen the Bible Project series, animated videos?
Yeah.
Watching Matt stuff really reminds me of the Bible Project. It's kind of a California thing. They have this way of speaking that's almost a monotone, but it's exciting to listen to. but it's trying to sound objective, and I can't even explain it. But if you know, if you listen to, you know what I mean. Maybe it's just a California thing. I don't know. But in the same way that the Bible Project is trying to open up the whole sacred narrative and all of its meaning and stuff like that, you know, I see him trying to apply that same hermeneutic, use a big word, that same hermeneutic to films written by people created in God's image, to try to open that up. And, you know, a lot of times you know, I think certainly he was a believer in sort of serendipity, these things that happen seemingly accidental, you know, like him getting the volleyball Wilson, or, you know, he burns his hand in the fire and all that sort of stuff, and it turns into the ball, which is kind of the sun. Again, all of this sort of stuff. But the idea is that there are no accidents, right? And even right to the end of his life, I mean, there is a purpose. There's a through story, and he shared a lot with me at the end too. He went through a lot of tough things with, you know, jobs he took where there was, you know, backbiting and this sort of stuff, and he was trying to stand against illegal and unethical work, and ends up getting. It's just, you know, towards the end, the last few things, he was trying to, I think, make sense of it all, because, you know, he had good jobs, but he wasn't going to hold his tongue when something wrong was being done, and I think he was standing up for that. And again, I think he was getting perspective on that as well, towards the end. I don't know if you had any conversations like that with him, Tom.
A little bit. I know that we actually had a Zoom call with him about a year ago with Mark, and that was kind of like he got really sick at some point, and it seemed like you know, he didn't have much time left, and then there was a period of several months where he was actually doing much better. You know, he was hiking and stuff. He looked much better, and this was during the summer of last year, so spring, summer. And so when we talked to him, I think it was around this time as well, he, you know, he was just he was, you know, it was him who had to kind of console us a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, I
remember that, Mark. And that's just something that, and I really, I had such an impact on me, and I just couldn't, like, if I ever have to go through something like this, I hope I have even like the tiniest bit of the sort of the courage that he had, and also the lightness, at least at that point in his disease, to go through that. I don't know if I could. It was something that was just so inspiring. I don't really remember all the things that we talked about then. I think we just talked about movies and about life, and it was very it was just like a nice conversation we had, like we've had before. And so I think the last time that I actually talked to him was probably in end of August of last year, and I still thought he was doing pretty well. Unfortunately, it was the last time that I talked to him, because then a month or two after that, I think he passed away. Because I remember I hadn't heard from him for a while, and I was wondering about him, and then I got that message, unfortunately. But he just, I don't know, he was asking about my life, and he was a volunteer firefighter as well, and he wanted me to become one as well. He's pushing me to do that, and so he was always thinking about other people, and it's sad that he's not here anymore, but he was the fact that I never met him, and I know Mark never met him in real life, and I don't believe you have met him in real life.
No, yeah.
The fact that he still had such an impact, like it's just I would consider him a really good friend, and I don't think, you know, it's strange because I've never met him, but I think that speaks volumes to his character.
And I remember that sense of him consoling other people. You know, it's odd. I don't know if you know, but about a month ago, Michael Heiser died. He's the one who wrote The Unseen Realm, had a big influence on the Bible Project, what we call the Divine Council. And I can't remember if I ever spoke with Mark about that. But at the end of his life, he wrote, he had a very aggressive cancer, and he just decided in the end he was going to go home, and that he was ready. He'd done all this, and it was similar to... I found this is the very last thing that Matt wrote to me on August 18th, 2022. That was almost towards the end, when, again, we didn't hear from him for a while. And he was really puzzling over the Cain and Abel story. That's what we were dialoguing back and forth about. And he says, talking about the Bible, in the curse, there's a cycle of subjugation. The serpent is cursed to eat the dust of the ground and to war with the woman and her offspring. and the man to be at war with the ground until he returns to the dust in death to be eaten to be by the serpent. In the Cain and Abel story, the ground is also cursed for Cain when Cain gives in to the temptation to sin, crouching like a beast, serpent at his door. So he was dealing with, and again, he's an image person, dealing with the image of the beast crouching and the serpent crouching, and God saying to Cain before he kills Abel that sin is crouching at your door, and whether or not we give in to the beast that is crouching at the door or not. And that's interesting. That was kind of the last conversation that we had by Facebook Messenger. We talked again, but I don't remember all the details. Still worrying about that, worrying about the choice one makes, and the central hero or the character, which direction are they going to go, towards the beast or towards even self-sacrifice often.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what he was thinking about then.
Thank you, Lou. And we now live in hope of the resurrection, inspired in large part by his work and the wonderful light that he's shone in each of our lives. As Thomas said, I came away very much with the same impression. One of my greatest teachers, great friend, in spite not meeting him in person, so to speak. And what's unusual but most welcome was he would say, "I love you" over the phone and things like that, which is, from an Irish context, it's strange. It's not something we do, but it's something I really appreciated, that Christian charity that he had, that concern for the people, that willingness to just throw caution to the wind and say how he felt, and express his true Christian character.
That's what people do in Narnia. People can hug each other in Narnia, and they don't think any lesser of you, Louis says.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your time today, gents. I wonder, Louis, if you might lead us in a prayer, maybe to close up.
Father God, we thank you for the legacy of Matt Miller, and we just thank you for the way he took the talents that you gave him and tried to not only learn himself, but pass on to others what you were teaching him. Lord, give us the eyes to see that he was always seeking for. Give us the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Help us to understand our culture, understand why it is fragmented and falling apart, so that we can be agents of transformation and healing, and not just Jeremiah's complaining about everything. Lord, we particularly pray for his wife and his children, that you would be with them and guide them and put people in their path to lift them up, Lord, in their sorrow. And Father, we just thank you that all of this technology in some ways has been a curse, but it can also be a blessing. And I thank you for Mark here and the way he's using this technology to bless rather than to distract. And in that sense, he is also keeping Matt's legacy alive, of taking something that the world may misuse and using it to tell your story and your message. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you so much.
Good stuff. And I guess I'm going to see you in 2.5 months, not too far away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm most looking forward to it. And God willing, I'll get to go in the opposite direction. I'd love to do an event or a couple of events in America if we can make it happen. As I said to you in Houston, I haven't heard back from your friend in Houston, actually, so I must follow that up. But I've been speaking with a few folks associated with the estuary that Paul Vanderklay, the pastor, has set up, and we might do one in Washington, D.C. I'll just email Lawrence Guinness to see if he was interested, and maybe Spencer Clavin and Paul Vanderklay himself, things like that. And then if maybe we could recreate some of that in Houston, if we could make it happen, that would be beautiful.
Wow.
And it'd be nice to see you, obviously, in person, Thomas, too. So God willing, we can.
Tom, are you in the Netherlands? Where is it you are, Tom? I'm trying to remember.
No, I'm in the US now.
Okay, were you in the Netherlands? Is that where you were?
Yeah, that's
okay. I'm remembering going back. Yeah, but what state are you in?
New York. I live in Rochester.
Oh, upstate New York. Not the crazy city.
No. I don't go there.
Oh my God! Isn't that the city that fell apart because of Kodak? Are there
yes,
there?
it's part of the Rust Belt, as I've been told. Yeah. It's doing a little bit. It's doing a little bit better now.
Wow. Well, good stuff, all. Well, great talking to you.
Thank you so
And
much.
like I said, I'll see you in a couple months. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
See you.
I'm going there. Nobody can stop me. I'm going